Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, good night, hopefully not, but the world is a sphere, so it's possible. Today is January 5th, 2023. Happy New Year, the first of our weekly CAPC office hours meetings of 2023. I will do the normal disclaimers at the beginning. Cluster API provider Azure is a sub-project of CNCF and SIG Cluster Lifecycle and Cluster API. We abide by the code of conduct, which is essentially raise hand, speak. We love to call on all voices, be kind to one another, be respectful. And at the beginning of every discussion, we take a few moments to allow any newcomers or anyone really, whoever wants to introduce themselves. So I'll take the mic away and open the floor to anyone who wants to raise hand and say hi. All right, you're up. I can't tell your first name from your handle, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, hi, everyone. First name is Francesco. I work at Giant Swarm. Started to use CAPC the last couple of months. So just been following what's going on and yeah, just listening in really. Hi, everyone.
Welcome, Francesco. Okay, so I'm going to go down the list here. It looks like there's a light agenda for now. Feel free to add agenda items in real time, and we'll get to them in order. And also remember to add yourself to the attendees list at the top if you wish with your company name. We've got a bunch who've already done that. All right, so we're going to do milestone review at the end, which is actually very topical because we're near the end of our 1.7 development cycle. So that means we'll get straight to the discussion items. First up is a public service announcement about patch releases cut yesterday. So 161 and 155 are live. So please feel free to update your staging environments, test it out, let us know if anything's unexpected, undesirable. I think the right folks are listening on the right Slack channels, but that's our public service announcement for that. And actually, I'm going to add one agenda item to sort of retro. Why did it take so long to cut a 1.6 patch release? We can discuss that at the end of this section. Close brace. Cool. And looks like I have the first agenda item for AKS graduation status. So I will click on this link, which is the practical PR that will actually do that work. So you can see there's a lot of stuff here. I won't review all the concrete changes, but this is essentially the PR that will move the APIs out of the experimental surface area in the source code of CAPZ into V1 Beta 1. So let's be super clear about what this means. What this means really is a sort of formal / official declaration that the Azure Managed Cluster and Azure Managed Control Plane APIs that serve AKS use cases are no longer experimental. They're not set apart from the sort of standard self-managed APIs. There's no change to the APIs here because of the way that the way we've classified the APIs as experimental is purely a kind of inside baseball engineering classification. It's not actually in the APIs, so there's no required changes to the version that folks have been using in their cluster API templates to maintain AKS clusters. So there's really no user change. It's just a sort of formal declaration. This PR will, I expect, also be augmented with additional documentation. I'll stop here and actually open for questions if anyone has any questions.
I'm just excited, so that's all I have to say.
Cool. +1. I share that. Bart, you're raising your hand. Sorry, I didn't see that earlier.
Sorry, I wasn't raising my hand. I was clapping. Nice work. Oh,
I see. Great. Cool. So let me give just a brief sort of timeline expectation about how this is going to work. So what we've discussed, hopefully sufficiently in Slack and the public among the maintainers, is a plan to land this PR shortly after the 1.7 release is cut, which we expect to be next week. That will give us roughly the entire development cycle of 1.8 to bake the AKS stories, augment with additional end-to-end tests, add additional documentation, clarify to folks who have been watching this project what graduation means in terms of sort of support. In other words, this doesn't include a declaration of additional support. So we want to make sure all of that is clear to the community, and we'll have the entire 1.8 development cycle to do so. So what that means is you'll hear folks during the 1.8 development cycle say things like AKS has been graduated from experimental in Cap Z before it's actually the concrete changes are actually delivered in 1.8. The reason that's mostly not misleading, in other words, I don't think it's strictly important for us to wait until the release of 1.8 to announce the graduation, is because, as I mentioned earlier, again, the graduation is really more of a sort of project declaration, and there's no actual material code changes or API change. Well, there are code changes in this PR, but the code changes are really under the hood, moving bits around from various source code buckets to other ones. Does all that make sense? Please, I'm going to scroll down and see if anyone's raising hand. All right, cool. TLDR or TLDL in this case. We are gonna, this change will land in main after 1.7 is released. It will be delivered as a release binary with 1.8. And in that roughly 2-month development cycle, we will continue to prioritize all the sort of appropriate reinforcements to this AKS surface area to make sure that there is some sort of material support, at least in terms of end-to-end tests, documentation that backs this graduation announcement. All right, cool. There's a lot of folks to thank here. I'll just be thanking you regularly on Slack asynchronously rather than making a big Oscar announcement, but this is very exciting, a lot of work. Thanks, everybody. All right, Ashutosh, you are up next. I yield the floor.
Hi, Happy New Year, folks. So this is an issue that I've been discussing also with Cecil on Slack. What I have observed is intermittently there are failures when trying to create Azure resources, and at least in the downstream pipelines that we run, that its occurrence is very high. So, at times, for example, if you can see on the screen, a couple of logs that I've pasted, and it is a bit cryptic because it says status code 0, context deadline ended. So, been trying to debug this, yeah, like I have no clue on how to navigate further. So just open an issue. Maybe we'll keep chatting about that. One experiment that I did, I just wanted to add this is I created an management cluster for Azure and deployed a network policy that cuts off the traffic from the AAD pod identity, but actually did not work the cluster creation went through and the tokens were received, probably because it goes through the DNAT rules that CAPZ and MI pod writes. So maybe we need help from Anish or somebody who can help us navigate this further. One theory was that this could happen if the time to fetch the token from Azure API exceeds 2 seconds. But while I was debugging, what I did is like, I put some logs in the ADL library itself that CAPZ was using. And I can see that there was one legacy token underscore legacy.go code where the IMDS timeout was set to 2 seconds. But for the latest code, it has not been set to 2 seconds. And I did log it and it is 0. What that means is when IMDS timeout is 0, it actually defaults to the context timeout, which is far more greater than 30 seconds. So, I mean, just a couple of observations. I think I'll also put that whatever observations I had into the issue, just wanted to bring this out in this meeting. And with that, like, Jack, maybe, if you have an answer to that, do you know, like, is there any way we can check audit logs for Azure APIs, like by trying to kind of filter it on a particular deployment of CAPZ and see, because this is reproducible, if you can try 4 or 5 times on your tilt setup, this comes up.
Yeah, there's certainly some things that folks who work in Azure have access to in terms of historical debugging that the public wouldn't have. We can lean in on that. I have a couple questions. Is there any particular type of resource that's more likely to exhibit this
No,
than the other? Okay.
No.
So like right here, I see
happened.
It looks like an inbound NAT rule. That this is the resource that failed here.
Yes.
And here we have an identity. Is that right? Or what?
Okay, I missed to tell the second point. I'll come to the second log, but inbound NAT rules is the one error that I pasted. There are others, for example, at times, it also errors to fetch the resource group. It also errors to fetch, for example, security groups and stuff like that. So whatever you can see on Azure cluster, all the resources that it reconciles, I have seen like for most of them, it have failed. The second error that you can see is a different error, that is context canceled error. That happens because, so we have like concurrency level set on Azure cluster reconciler, that is 10 by default. And there are multiple go routines trying to reconcile that. So for the first time, when the scope is created, it just creates a AZ identity CR, that is the AAD pod identity stuff. So it just creates a custom resource by using the Kubernetes client via controller runtime. But the next time it does, there is a client rate limiter that responds back, sorry, you cannot do this. And it just fails because of rate limiting, because of client rate limiting.
Right.
And that eventually cancels the context, which eventually cancels everything. And if it happens, you can see error like this, which is still fine. I mean, the second symptom is still not that worrisome.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Is it clearly stated what it sounds like this is only AAD pod identity. Only, go ahead.
Yeah, the reason I am talking about AAD pod identity is, yes, because I heard like there were some discussions regarding if we are not able to fetch token in 2 seconds, we have an error like this, which is context deadline exceeded. But I do feel like I don't have any concrete proof to say that it happened because of AAD pod identity. But the second context canceled error, it just happened because in the workflow of AAD pod identity, we need to create a custom resource, right? And when we do that, that ends in client rate limiting. but that is still clear. We know the reason. For the first one, we don't know the reasons. So the second one can still be tuned by setting priority fairness or increasing the QPS and burst values in the controller, in the CAPC controller. But the first one, we don't know like how to like get away with that.
Got it.
Good news is it just gets recovered automatically in the next reconcile, but then it just kind of throws a bad user experience. And for example, there are certain clients that are dependent on the status of these objects, the wrapper clients that are there downstream, that kind of just sometimes behaves weird because of this.
Yep, that makes sense. Have we seen this first example in a non-AAD pod identity enabled cluster?
This is my next step. So I do have a workload identity POC ready, and I'll try to kind of do a couple of runs, and I'll see if I'm able to reproduce it. If not, that means we have something more close towards AAD pod identity to find out and label. So that's
Okay,
one thing
great.
that I've not been able to do. That I've been just stuck into all those stuff. So I'll just do that.
That sounds like a sensible path forward. Well, thanks for gathering all this debug information and sharing with the larger group. So anyone feel free to lean in if you have any ideas. And also if you encounter this yourself, remember there's a canonical issue now to capture this. So
sure. I'll put all other details after I'm done with the next experiment. Thanks, Zach.
Okay, great. Okay,
That's all.
cool. If we're done with that, then I wanted to quickly just mention or acknowledge that we previously, probably early fall, maybe late summer, had made a commitment to kind of query the community on a weekly basis for patch releases. And it seems like we lost our automation reminder for that and didn't do that for once after the 1.6 release. I think that is the sort of main cause of really only having one 1.6 patch release in the last 5 weeks or so. Does anyone else have any thoughts about answering the why question? Ashutosh, you're raising your hand, go ahead.
Yes, I think I pasted a issue on the chat. So also maybe we want to clean up the way our crowd jobs are currently in test grid. This helps us to get the test signals, and the UI becomes more intuitive. Idea is that we have a per release branch YAMLs. Maybe this is not very directly related to why we slip on the release, but I'm not sure how the release test signals were there. So this was a discussion that happened on Slack thread again. So we could actually follow the way CAP is doing right now, like having separate YAMLs for last 2 release. And then this gives us better organization on the release branches and then test signals. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I think we should all be totally open to improving that. I'm not sure that there's actually anything other than reorganizing the files that we're talking about. So it's not maybe entirely clear to folks, but we actually do have periodic coverage for both. Say, here's the AKS variety. This tests the latest release branch, and this tests the N-1 release branch. So for right now, this is a 1.6 signal, and this is a 1.5 signal. So this would be AKS signal to inform whether or not we are patch release ready. And then similarly, we have that. I'm gonna move this around. That
right, but
go ahead, Ashutosh.
Sorry to interrupt. I just want to say it doesn't like gives us like immediately that okay, it's something with 1.6 branch. Like we have to interpret that again, like it's AKS P1 beta 1, and then it should be something.
You could be making a point that the semantics are not clear, but so here's the current semantics, and we can maybe discuss how to improve it. The current semantics is the sort of like prefix here identifies the battery of tests that we're running. So this is a particular set of tests. So for us, it's the periodic end-to-end test for AKS. And then we divided that into 3 separate sort of commit targets. First is main. So this is sort of, I hopefully sort of clear that we're testing that set of tests at main. Here we're testing the V1 beta 1 release branch. So this is a moving target because with the way that we've defined our release support, we simply we support patch releases for 2 minor releases at any given time, and that calculation is basically latest minus release plus latest minus 1. So this semantics is just meant to suggest this is our release branch for latest, this is our release branch for -1. So that the common set of tests, which is to say in this case AKS end-to-end, are divided up into those 3 release targets, and we have something similar here for the sort of full set of self-managed scenarios. So we've got those tests running at main, those tests running on the latest release branch, and those tests running on the -1 release branch. Does that help explain it? It doesn't, not saying that that's the right sort of.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Also, if we go to the test infra, so you're saying this CAPC periodic E2E V1 beta 1 -1 that is the currently selected, it tests for release 1.5.
At present, currently, yeah. Once we cut 1.7, it will test 1.6. I mean, we have to manually curate the test infra config to make sure that we revise upward the test configs as we cut new minor releases. But yes, that's correct for now.
Right. Okay. Maybe I then missed in the test infra. I somehow realized that either 1.6 or either 1.5, any one of them, the tests are missing. But that would be my mistake. But still, this issue tries to advocate separate files for each release branches so that at least the organization is easy. Right now, I think it's mixed up in the same file. If you see in the test infra.
That's right. I mean, I would say feel free to go submit a PR if you want to advocate for that, and we can weigh the pros and cons of that decomposition.
Makes sense. Yeah, sure. And thank you for explaining this, Jack. I was like little.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not exactly the most obvious thing in the world if you look at all these tests. If that's obvious to you, then I envy your brain. Matt, you've been very patient, raising your hand. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I don't have a lot to say. Well, as to this topic, I think maybe there's a way this could be organized that would be a little more useful at a glance. But once you know the conventions Jack was talking about, you can pretty easily figure out like if we're ready to do a patch release and all that. And the status was, at least when we finally thought of doing a patch release, that everything was really red and everybody was about to go on vacation for a week or two. So it certainly seemed like a bad time to do a patch release. So that's why it got extended, I think. But looking in the rearview mirror, the initial problem was overall what Jack said. We failed to remind ourselves, and speaking just for myself, I didn't even think about a patch release. We have so much stuff to do. A whole week went by, maybe even 2 weeks before I was like, oh, we should have done a patch release. So it wasn't like it came up, we were too busy to do it, or we thought it wasn't important. It literally slipped my mind. So I feel like that's where the pileup started, perhaps. And then the rest of it is just, I don't know that it could have been avoided because we had a lot of test failures. Things have gotten better since. And so we weren't really ready to release. And also the holidays were coming up. And so you don't really want to drop a release right before everybody disappears for a couple of weeks. So that's all I had to say. That it's mostly human factors, I guess.
Yeah, I think the situation around this is largely sort of forgivable / explainable. But I do feel like maybe I have my own subjective observation that our plan to pull the community for permission to cut a patch release, maybe that's a little too costly, and the community would actually benefit from just a schedule-based commitment. Say every 2 weeks we cut a patch release, with some exceptions if there's a CVE or something like that. So maybe I can take a quick temperature check of that, inverting the current idea that we rely on the community to tell us to cut a patch release, and instead we just simply document we will cut patch releases every N weeks during the release cycle. And if the temperature is really, if folks are really not excited about that idea in this meeting, then I think we can nix it, but if folks seem to be okay with that, then we can follow up in the Slack to really pull the community at large to see what that is. Does anyone have any concerns about a more time-based patch release cadence? The chat is suggesting that sounds sensible. Yeah, I think the reason we wanted to pull the community is because we, as maintainers, don't really have a strong opinion yet of how often we should cut a patch release. So we were kind of passing the buck to our users, which is maybe not the greatest plan. Cool. So I'll follow up on that on Slack to make sure that enough people can weigh in on that before we make a change, and then we'll document that and start doing that. Any other comments on the last release or the set of patches? I know that Bart, you're present. You shared in Slack that you're having trouble actually applying those releases. It made me a little sad. Do you have any updates on that?
No, I haven't looked at it yet, but it's an issue that I've had in my cluster, so I think the cluster itself is bad. So I'm gonna.
Got it.
I don't think it's related to the release.
Okay, cool. Well, if you're able to sort of narrow down what exactly happened, I would love to have an end-to-end test around that scenario, just so we can capture the particular flow you've been using and make sure it works.
Sounds good. I'll post updates if I have any.
Great. Okay, I'll spare us all some cognitive cycles by leaving the test grid UI. And I think we are at the end of our discussion topics, and that means we are going to go to milestone review. All right, so that is going to look like this. Okay, so January 10th, that is my
Next Tuesday.
Yeah, Gregorian math says Tuesday. Cool. This is a pretty actually large release, large bucket of stuff. So we've got 10 things. So I think by convention, we normally will go through this uncompleted set of work items and evaluate if we're going to kick them off. And as of now, obviously, because we're planning to release next week, the criteria for inclusion is the threshold's pretty high. So let's assume that most of these aren't going to land. It's good that we have this. This is a huge one, and I think it's actually almost ready. Is that right, Matt? So we'll
Flex is going to land. Yeah,
that's
that's
amazing. Great work.
I got several reviews yesterday and made some small changes this morning, and that failure that you're seeing there is a flake as far as I can tell. So I think it's going to land.
Great.
So
Yeah, great work. I know that's roughly 2 years of off and on work. Ashutosh, is this is the workload identity proposal mostly good to go?
It looks like there have been some comments from CAPI folks, and hopefully it should go in. But let's keep it like here for a while. I'll be able to give an update in next couple of days.
Okay, cool. Next one is another big one, but I think this one's ready. I haven't reviewed this recently, but I've been sort of watching it. Is it mostly ready, Mike?
Yeah, I got some feedback from John last night. I'll be making those changes hopefully in the next couple of hours, and we'll have that ready for a final review a little bit later on today.
Great. That'll be a huge reason to get 1.7. So thank you for that. Thanks for reviewing, John. Okay, so this is an issue that I am going to kick out because I don't expect to have, I mean, it sounds pretty horrible, but I'm not planning, actually, yeah, I thought I quoted that with myself. I'll go ahead and formally assign that to myself. And kick it out to be next. Anything that we kick out here, if someone has bandwidth, feel free to lean in and kick it back in. Okay, I think we want to, I've seen folks actively agreeing with this, and I think we want to keep this in, so I'm going to keep it in for now.
Yeah, it should be good. I addressed all of the last round of feedback from Nawaz, which was the second final round of review, with the exception of one that I'm just verifying the interaction with conversion from V1 Alpha 4. That's the only piece that I'm still working on, and I'm doing that. I was doing that when the meeting started, so it should be done.
Cool. So this will unblock Azure CNI in CAPC, which is a ask from lots of folks for a long time. So that's great. Thank you so much. All right. Externally managed annotation on unmanaged machine pools. I see my avatar. What is the status of this? Looks like Cecile's reviewed it and has asked me to weigh in. I would be happy to do that. Does anyone have any more recent content? Looks like it's a couple weeks or a couple months stale at this point. I feel like this is a fairly light change. I'll go ahead and keep this in the milestone for now. It's not like really a big deal if we kick something out at the last second. All right, so this I'm going to kick out because I can just predict that I'm not going to have cycles for that. And that's really just a reference template thing anyway, so it doesn't necessarily have to go into a release. Okay, Willie has been working hard on this. I've been looking from the periphery and I think this is mostly ready, so I'll keep that in. Willie or someone else, feel free to interrupt me if that's wrong.
That's right. Yeah, just one more comment from Cecile and it should be good.
Okay, cool. I'm moving down. I haven't clarified there's some resistance to even landing this, but I think this is largely ready. So I'll just keep this in the milestone, and I think it's not a question of whether or not it's going to go in the milestone, but it's whether or not it's going to be included at all. So keep that in for now. This, I know this has been a long time coming. I don't think is that Mateus? Yeah, I don't think he's here. It's the 3 weeks ago. I'll just add a quick. Okay. And then finally, I think this one hasn't moved recently. I would call it. Oh, that's actually not true. Do we have a review on it? Looks like it's got passing end to end. Ashtosh, you probably don't remember reviewing this in November, but this looks like it might actually be ready. So I'm going to keep this in the milestone. Maybe it just needs some final review. All right, great. So this is some set of this will land before 1.7. 1.7 is already a really big release. So that's great. Let's maybe, do we want to, I think we can asynchronously go through and like retroactively tag things that have landed in the last few weeks that weren't properly classified as 1.7. We have to do that in real time. What we can do in real time is just quickly prune the active PRQ for things that we do want to explicitly add to the milestone. So let's see. Nawaz, can you speak to the readiness of the Linux OS custom config?
I'm still pushing changes. It's a work in progress, Jack, as of now.
Okay, cool. So I'll go ahead and tag this as vNext for now.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Let's see. I mean, things like this, we don't have to worry about tagging to the milestone, I don't think. Willie, go ahead.
Yeah, the configurable scope for system assigned identities is almost not work in progress anymore, but it's gonna, I still haven't had reviews on it, so I'm not sure if I can merge it in, but it's like mostly done.
Okay, cool. Let's just add it and be aspirational.
All right.
All right, this is definitely the next. So we'll create the 1.8 milestone, assuming we release next week. Oh, it's already set to be next. Never mind. Oops, I didn't want to do that. I broke my, or I should say Google Docs broke my browser back window. Let's see here. Matt, is this a vNext?
All right. I guess not, because Cecile already approved it. It's just changing a bunch of import aliases.
Okay, cool. So this isn't, these aren't super important to milestone tag, but
It
we'll do
doesn't,
anyway.
no, either way is fine, but it might, I guess it might land in this milestone. Because it failed a test flake, I think.
Okay, well, I'll just go ahead and retest.
Sorry, go ahead. I was gonna
you go ahead.
point out, there's one in the main queue that we should tag as vNext. Because it
Cool.
conflicts really hard with the VMSS one, and I guess we're pulling rank for VMSS.
I definitely agree with that. Where's that?
It's a very top, better detect when machines and machine pool VMSS are not running on the latest model. I think it'll just end up being a rebase, probably not that painful, but we're certainly not going to merge it for this release.
Okay, cool. Francesco.
Yeah, just want to say that that's mine, and yeah, I'm just waiting for the other PR to be merged and rebase, so I can do a bit more testing.
Yeah, sorry about that. Usually we would never, value one over another one, but the VMSS thing's been.
No problem. Also because I'm not so convinced anymore that this approach is the right one, so I will try either to have a chat on Slack or something like that.
Okay, cool.
Love to see the teamwork. Ashtosh, should we assume that this is going to land?
Add pod add-in. Yeah, it should land. It is just a simple bomb that just uses the latest add pod identity that fixes CVs.
This tests are failing, so I'll retest and then maybe you'll get the email notifications if it fails again. And you can.
Yep. Hey, I'll take a look at that.
And Dane, I saw you raising your hand.
That's okay. I can just participate in the thread on Slack for that other issue. I was just going to say, I think the latest model thing is going to run into an issue with Bootstrap token refresh, which is going to bump latest model, and you'll be cycling nodes whenever Bootstrap tokens refresh.
I see. Okay, cool. Great. Well, thanks for adding that context. And if you lean into that, thanks in advance. Ashtosh, are you raising your hand?
Yes, because I just wanted to add one quick thing. Matt,
Please.
this CI lint job that is failing, I think it's better to get added to 1.7 because a lot of lint issues are creeping into main branch. And also a PSA, until this gets merged, please do make lint and make lint fix before raising your PR so that we don't creep in more lint issues.
Can you give a background on why this is not? I'm not seeing this in my PRs. I'm not seeing the. I guess I should look at see what the
okay
does.
So if you pull capc main branch and you run make lint, there are a couple of lint issues, and the reason it happened is we did work on a race detector PR sometime back, I think, and somehow we missed. There was a bug that creeped in that kind of skips testing the make lint target, and after that, the subsequent PRs that we merged in, it kind of did not detect the lint failures in the job.
Okay, cool. Matt, are you engaged here? Are you aware of this?
Yeah, I'll be looking at it. I'll look at it right after this.
Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and formally assign it.
I think I broke it. in the first place.
I didn't want to say that.
So you're-
That's
I
fine.
mean,
So Ashish, you're saying that we're no longer actually running lint tests, which is why they're not failing
Yeah.
EPRs. I
yeah,
see.
we are not. Yeah, no longer running it.
Cool. Did I add it to the 1.7 milestone? I agree. We want to get this into 1.7. Okay. Yeah. Rather than go through every one, maybe we can give folks some time back. I will, blast this up a little bit, and I'll just allow folks to, if you see anything you want to comment on, feel free. Raise your hand. And I guess there's one more page. Oh, and that one's already been accounted for. Okay, we are sort of at the end of our formal agenda, I think. Anyone have any final last thoughts? Or has a topic come to you that you want to throw out there? All right, Happy New Year again. 16 minutes of our time back. Be well, everyone.
I could.
Oh, go ahead,
Happy New
Ashish.
Year. No, I was saying I could use the 16 minutes to learn Kubernetes again because after holidays I've forgotten everything. So
Yes, fair enough.
so bye. Happy New Year.
Bye, folks.
I
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.